Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Thursday, June the 19th, 2025. And a little bit happened on this day back in boxing history, going right back until 1936. And one of the most significant heavyweight title fights of all time. I'm referring to Joe Louis when he came up against Max Schmeling for the World Heavyweight Championship? It was the first fight, wasn't it? Of course it was. Hang on. I don't think it was, or was it? Either way, significant ramifications around the world because, of course, World War II was probably in the midst of, well, it's about 8 years away from happening, wasn't it? But, 5 years away from happening. Not that great with my war history, but it was on the verge of that World War II, and the Germans, of course, were on the march, looking to sort of take over the world, weren't they? And Joe Louis being sort of the representation of America, the evil USA, and Max Schmeling got the job done in the 12th round and knocked Joe Louis out. Joe Louis would obviously get his revenge in the rematch, and very, very swiftly, actually, with a first round knockout to put that to bed. And imagine the pressure on Joe Louis in that fight after having been beaten in that first fight, his only loss at that point, and then pretty much having the whole of the United States on your back, I suppose. I'm not quite sure when that rematch was. Let's have a quick look, actually. Sorry about this. I'm just going to go to BoxRec. When did they have the rematch? I'm assuming it was in the midst or about to be the World War. Where was it? The Brown Bomber. Let's have a look. So in 1936. So 1938. So I was still a couple of years away, or 3 years away, whatever it was, from the World War II actually starting. But I suppose obviously the rumblings were around at that point, and hostilities were at a high, and everything else. But Joe Louis went out and I think apparently, he went out and knocked him out in the first round, but apparently it was at that point like the equivalence of people listening on the radio. Remember, there's no TV back then, but I don't know the exact figures, but apparently, it was probably per capita the most, well, I was going to say most watched, but most listened to, or people in one form or another seeing what's going on with the fight the most in history per capita. I think that's where I read somewhere. And again, I don't know the exact figures, but by all accounts, it was. So what, as I said, what the sort of pressure would have been on Joe Louis back in that fight. But he handled it obviously like a true champion should, and knocked him out in one devastating round. All right, also on this day, let's actually got a couple there. Where are we? I'll just bring it up here. 1992. Evander Holyfield defeated Larry Holmes on points in Las Vegas for the world heavyweight title. Now, this is one I reckon Larry Holmes especially is probably one fighter that slipped under the radar. I know all through his boxing career he's always been a little unloved, I suppose, and disrespected, or not respected enough, whatever you might want to call it. Probably not disrespected, but not rated as highly as probably he should be. And people forget that he lost 3 fights in a row. Well, he was 48-0 before he fought Michael Spinks and lost his title in 1985. And people thought that was it. He was very bitter after the defeat, looked very, very slow, lethargic. I think, was he 35 years of age or something like that? I'm just going to get Neil here. He's sniffing the bin. And then he lost a rematch against Michael Spinks. Actually looked a lot better in the rematch, but still lost, I thought, well, I won't say controversial 15-round decision. I thought it was a really, really close fight. Larry came out like a house on fire and faded as the fight went on, and Michael Spinks, to his credit, came home strong and won that split decision. Then he came back and fought Mike Tyson, was obliterated in 4 rounds in 1988. So it looked like his career was over. The new champion had come through and made a definitive statement with Larry Holmes and got him out of there, like what happens, or has happened, and probably will happen for, in boxing history, where the the new champion, or the modern day sort of version, will sort of retire the old champion. But it wasn't to be, because just over 3 years later, Larry Holmes came back at the age of 38. Now, in the context, I think George Foreman was 36 when he came back. No, sorry, I take that back. Sorry. George Foreman was 38 when he came back. Larry Holmes was 41, approaching 42 years of age when he came back. And probably a little bit like George Foreman, was given, well, no hope. He was sort of laughed at. And he had, I think he had, looking at his box rec yesterday, he had 11 fights. What was it? I'm just trying to think. Might have been, he had, within 12 months, by the way, he'd got a world title shot at this is the fight with Evander Holyfield. He came back in 91. Pretty sure this was his 6th or 7th fight in that 12-month period. That's how often he fought when he came back, just like George Foreman did. And he got that shot with Evander Holyfield and put up a great fight. Yes, he lost a decision, but was fantastic in defeat. And I'm just trying to think back. The fight before this was the Ray Mercer fight. That's right. I think he'd had 5 or 6 fights in the 12 months from coming back. Beat Ray Mercer, who was one of the most sort of feared heavyweights out there at the time, and then got the Evander Holyfield fight after that. But either way, a fantastic performance. But it wasn't done again for him, because I think it was a couple of years later after that, he fought Oliver McCall for the WBC heavyweight title and lost in that one as well. So unlike George Foreman, he never actually won the heavyweight title, but fought for it twice. And I just think it goes under the radar just a little bit because, as I said, coming back at nearly 42 years of age, he fought for 12 years. Was it 12 or even 30? Hang on, he came back in 91. Might have been 11 years, sorry. But had a 24-fight sort of second career, just like George Foreman did. Now, George Foreman was obviously out for 10 years. Larry Holmes was out for just over 3. But to go 21-3 in his second career, George Foreman went, I think, 31-3 in his second career. So even though you would say, obviously, George Foreman had the better second career by actually winning the world title or the heavyweight title, as I said, I just don't think, excuse me, we should be forgetting about Larry Holmes. He just always seems to be the forgotten man. During his career, he was in the shadow of Muhammad Ali, even when he was just beating every contender left, right and centre. He was still not get his respect. Then he was almost at the 49-0 point and was beaten by Spinks. That obviously didn't go down well. And then even in this second career that he had, never quite got the respect that I think he earned. And also just in the world heavyweight rankings of all time, I still don't think he gets the respect that he deserves. I've got him in the top 3 or 4 of all time. That's probably in the mix of Lewis, Ali, and Foreman as well. I think would have to be in there for what he did as well, arguably. So anyway, that was Larry Holmes on this day, 1992, dropping a 12-round decision to Evander Holyfield. Also on this day, 1993, so the year after, Australia's Troy Waters went up against terrible Terry Norris. Now, I can't remember where that was. I won't pull my phone out again here because actually, I'll have to because I've got a couple other things on it. It was in San Diego, California for the WBC 154-pound title. And Terry Norris won by 3rd round knockout. But geez, I think it would have been probably the hardest 3 rounds he's ever had up to that point in his career. And that includes the fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. Like a lot of Aussies, before that and especially after that, Troy Waters went to San Diego as a complete unknown. And just like almost, I suppose, what George Kambosos did, what Jeff Fennick did, what Liam Paro did, what Jeff Fennick almost did in 91 as well against Azuma. Well, Jeff wasn't exactly an unknown, was he? But you get the point. But he went over there, and Jeff Harding's another one, of course, in 89. But he went to San Diego against the red-hot Terry Norris, who had beaten Sugar Ray Leonard a couple of years before and just been on an absolute tear. And he came up against Troy Waters and probably thought it was just going to be an easy night out. It obviously would have been a voluntary defence. I don't think Troy Waters was number 1 with the WBC. Troy had actually fought, what was it, 4 years earlier for the IBF belt in Italy when he came up against Gianfranco Rosi and was beaten pretty comprehensively in that one over in Italy. That was good, great performance from Rosi, who was a really underrated fighter. He really was. He held the IBF title for a long time actually, and beat some really good fighters. But that's another story. But so Troy Waters had built himself back up, got the opportunity against Terry Norris, and put Terry Norris down. Almost had him out. And it was just back and forth, just an absolute war between the two fighters. And amazingly, it only went 3 rounds. Troy Waters was pulled out at the end of the 3rd round. He'd had enough. That's how brutal the fight was. That just in 3 rounds, Troy had knocked Terry Norris down and had him on the verge, but then Terry Norris obviously didn't take that too kindly and really went to town on Troy Waters. But Troy Waters never took a backward step. He was dropped, I think, in that 3rd round as well, but never took a backward step. He just kept in front of Terry Norris and kept going back and forth with him, and wasn't knocked out, wasn't stopped. He was pulled out in the corner after the 3rd round. But yeah, that's how brutal that fight was. That one of the competitors had to be saved at the end of the 3rd round just by the amount of punishment he took, even though he had his opponent down and in a lot of trouble. So yeah, that was on this day, what's that, 32 years ago. And I still remember it. It really brought back memories of the Jeff Harding fight. And since then, as I said, Jeff Horn, Kambosos, Paro, Horn, all these great Australian fighters who just pulled out these unbelievable wins when they just weren't supposed to. And that's just been the Aussie culture ever since, hasn't it? That's the way we roll. We always take on the best. I mean, Troy Waters wouldn't have hesitated to take the fight with Terry Norris, just like Andries, with Harding with Andries, and Horn with Pacquiao, and all these other fighters that I just mentioned. So, yeah, great memories of Troy Waters, the late Troy Waters, who unfortunately passed away a few years back. Yeah, one of Australia's great fighters and underrated, because he also fought, who was it, Simon Brown, he fought Felix Trinidad. I think I might have talked about him yesterday, actually, just as far as resumes and that go. But yeah, just a great fighter was Troy Waters, and probably one of those unheralded Aussie fighters who never actually won a world title, but fought for it a couple of times. It might have been about 3 times, I think, was it? But yeah, probably doesn't get as much plaudits as some of the others. But anyway, that was Troy Waters. All right, some more news. Actually, just a couple other things. Sorry, there was one other thing. 2021. Jamel Charlo defended his middleweight title against Mexico's Juan Macias Montiel in Houston, Texas, and won on points. That was the other thing that happened on this day. All right, so some news overnight that Canelo Crawford, we know it's on. Obviously, it's going to be September 13th in Las Vegas. Now, the stadium has been confirmed. It is going to be Allegiant Stadium, the football stadium. They reckon it holds about 65,000 people in there. That is now the official venue of Canelo Crawford. They've come to an agreement with the football fraternity, or whatever they are, the College Football Association. They've moved that game, so Canelo Crawford will be at the biggest stadium, and the first fight at that stadium, by the way, which will be huge. Now, what this means is expressions of interest are now open for the first deep dive tour to Las Vegas for Canelo Crawford. So if you've been thinking about it since I've mentioned it, if you've been talking to your partner or whoever it might be, you've got to get permission from. If that's the case, then we need to move soon, because the only thing left are the ticket prices. I've got an idea of what I think they'll be, but to give you an idea, I think what you're going to be up for, I think with accommodation, airfares, and this is from the East Coast, and ticket, you're going to be up for about $5,500. Okay, so I need to hear from you now. So you can either do that through, or probably do that through the Instagram account. Just send me a message on there, or my personal account if you're following me on Instagram, my personal one, but probably more preferably the deep dive one. You can just send me a message on there, and I'm probably going to get an email or something set up as well that we can sort of communicate with, and where you can provide all the information and all that sort of stuff, and obviously bank details and all that sort of thing as well. So yes, the time has come, not officially to push the button, because I'm waiting on the tickets, of course, to come on sale, but as far as the airfares and accommodation goes, and just a few other bits and pieces I'm getting organised, yes, I need to hear from you now. So as I said, about $5,500. Now, airfares can change. I'm just sort of going on current airfares from the East Coast. So it's probably more so Melbourne, but I'm pretty sure Sydney and Brisbane are the same. But of course, if we've got to hook up and meet up, it could be a little bit more, but I've just got to work that out. But just keep that in mind. But as I said, if you have been talking to the lovely or whoever it is that you have to speak to, and maybe getting your affairs in order as far as money and time off work and all that sort of stuff, then let me know, hit me up right now. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to cap it. Now, we might not even get anyone wants to go at all, by the way, so I might be getting a bit ahead of myself, but I have already tentatively booked some rooms in Vegas. I've done it with the free cancellation and everything, because what will happen, so this is probably why not to panic straight away, I suppose. Don't think you got to get onto me today, because I have booked some rooms, and as I said, the free cancellation, because what will happen now that the fight has been announced, the hotels will cotton on to what's going on. They have a list of stuff going on, and the rooms will skyrocket, no doubt. Not so sure about the airfares. There's always a cheap way to get over there, or cheaper way to get there, so I'm not really stressed about that, but it's the accommodation that can really kill you. So I booked some rooms at the Luxor, which is the pyramid in Vegas. You've probably all seen it. And the reason I've picked the Luxor, it's a little bit at the end of the strip, but the reason I've actually picked it is because it is literally a 5 to 10 minute walk to Allegiant Stadium. So you've got to be close. And believe me, when you get there, you'll understand what I'm talking about, because it's a long strip, especially on a Saturday night or whatever it is when the fight is. I think it's a Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, whatever. But it is a nightmare when there's a big event on with Ubers and taxis and all that sort of stuff. So I've picked the Luxor because it's a 5 to 10 minute walk to Allegiant Stadium. And there's monorails and buses and all that to go up and down the strip that you can get to any casino or spot on the strip while you're there. So, and all that information, of course, will be provided once you book. So there it is, Deep Dive Tours, the first event. Canelo Crawford, $5,500. See if you can make it happen, and let me know. But as I said, just hit me up on the Deep Dive Instagram page, preferably. So what's that? There's a couple other things that was going on as well. Jaime Munguia has been, well, he's not been found guilty of anything at the moment, because they'll have to do some, well, I suppose his penalties will have to be decided, but his B sample has come back positive as well. So he's in a little bit of trouble, is young Jaime Munguia. Not sure what will happen to him, but yeah, the penalties will be laid down now, and I wouldn't expect to be too kind on Jaime Munguia. They don't really like sort of drug cheats these days, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's probably a minimum 12-month ban plus a nice hefty fine, I would think, as well. And speaking of fines and everything, Chris Eubank Jr., yes, the British Boxing Board of Control are going to, well, they've launched the investigation into Chris Eubank Jr. using a sauna, which is apparently a no-no in England, which I just cannot believe that you cannot use a sauna to cut weight. But anyway, he has been, well, they've launched proceedings, and he's going to have to face the music. So whether it's a fine, suspension, whatever, and don't forget also he's facing that $100,000 or £100,000, I think it was, fine or whatever it was for the penalty for smashing the egg on Conor Benn. So he's in a little bit of trouble. He's Chris Eubank Jr. I know he made a lot of money, and then he had the weight issue as well, didn't he? So he's been hit sort of 3 times, hasn't he, for that fight? But I think he's doing all right. What do you make, $10 million or whatever? So I'm sure he'll survive. He'll probably make another 10 or 15 in the rematch. So I'm sure he'll be able to afford it. But just for me, absolutely bizarre that you could be penalised or fined or suspended, whatever, because of using a sauna. Now, how would they actually even know unless you're posting it all over your social media? I don't get it, how he's actually being caught. I think that was actually what happened, but I'm pretty sure Conor Benn did as well. I don't know, but that is absolutely bizarre. But that is how they roll in England. So having said that, guys, that will do for today. Hope you have a great Thursday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.